We are by the side of a busy road. PM 2.5 reading is 147.
We're in Autorickshaw. What does that kind of exposure do to a human body?
They are breathing in this level of air pollution consistently for long periods of time, making them more likely to develop diseases.
We're going to go into the metro and see how the pollution level will be there. Here we are in the metro.
Now we are in a car. The windows are up, the air conditioner is on. Pallavi, what is the PM 2.5 level looking like?
I think you'll be surprised. So let's go check it out.
I'm in the heart of New Delhi, and behind me is high air pollution. It's a bit hazy, but this pollution is not just in Delhi, it's for miles around, miles beyond that in other cities also. However, there is one hack against air pollution, and that is exposure. And to explain us more is Dr. Pallavi Pant from the Health Effects Institute in Boston. Pallavi, talk us through the plan. What do you hope to convey or to achieve? What is the outcome you're looking at?
Yeah, so, when we think of air pollution, a lot of times we think of it as this big problem that we need big solutions for, but also we feel powerless about what we can do as individuals. So today what I would like to do is go to a few different spots that people tend to spend a little bit of time at, and also queue it in different modes of transportation that we all tend to use. See what air pollution levels look like and how we can try and reduce our exposure. And to help us do that, I have with me this air quality monitor. This is going to tell us what the levels of air pollution are in different places, and then we can talk through what does that mean and how do I protect myself as I go on with my daily activities.
So we are by the side of a busy road, and the PM 2.5 reading is 147. Pallavi, good, bad, what does this mean?
Pretty high. Usually, when we're thinking about what a safe level looks like, the World Health Organization tells us is about 5 annually. So this is a pretty high exposure, and considering that there's really heavy traffic, probably people spending upwards of 40 minutes, 60 minutes sitting in the traffic or moving through traffic. This just means that we are inhaling a lot of this pollution. And you said PM 2.5, which is essentially tiny particles. We can't see them with our eyes, but they're going deep into our lungs. They can cross the blood-brain barrier, go into our brain as well, and can cause a lot of different health effects. In the short term, like if we continue standing here for 3-4 hours, I'm sure we'll start feeling itchiness in our throat. Our eyes might get watery. We might feel like, stuffy. So imagine we're just standing here, we're gonna walk away in a couple of minutes, but there's people like street vendors or small shops that are operating next to these busy roads. They're there 12, 14 hours a day, every single day of the week, all year, many, many years. So they are breathing in this level of air pollution consistently for long periods of time, making them more likely to develop diseases, maybe have to pay more for medication, take time off, not be able to work and, earn money, which we all want to do.
So we're by the side of a very busy road in South Delhi, very crowded, very polluted. The pollution here is the PM 2.5 level is about 150, 160. We're going to go into the metro and see how the pollution level will be there. Pallavi, what do you expect?
I think you'll be surprised. So let's go check it out.
So here we are in the metro station, and the reading, Pallavi was right, is a surprise, at least to me. Pallavi, it's about 115, 120. People will usually be here for just a few minutes, 5-10 minutes. How much of a danger is such an exposure?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not surprised because a lot of times we imagine that just because we are in an indoor environment, it's going to be cleaner, healthier, better quality of air, but that's not always true. Also, a place like this, there's a lot of movement. There's also open, exits and entrances, so the air is really getting mixed with what's outside. What I would keep in mind is you're getting exposed to this level of air pollution for maybe 10 minutes, but it's every day. And I'm curious to see what happens when we're inside the metro.
So here we are in the metro, and the reading is about 85, 90 for PM 2.5.
It's a lot lower than the main wind. It's also air conditioned, so works for heat. But the levels are still pretty high. So a lot of times people would, think, okay, I'm not on the road anymore. I'm indoors. I'm inside this, metro cabin. Let me take off my mask. Let me relax a little bit. But I would say pollution levels are not that low. So maybe you want to keep the mask on if you're able to. Just something to keep in mind. The level is now going up to almost 100. So there's also fluctuation. It's not going to stay static. It'll be a little bit up and down. Tends to be definitely lower than next to the road. We're braking now. So that also can make a difference.
Does the crowd make a difference?
Not for this pollutant, not for PM 2.5, but if we were thinking about, just how many people are in here, then things like carbon dioxide levels can change.
So we just got out of the metro, and the pollution outside, the PM 2.5 level, has almost doubled. It's gone up from about, say, 80 micrograms to about 150 or so micrograms.
Broadly, what I would say is we started from the pavement at about 140. Inside the metro station was still pretty high, 120. The underground metro station inside the cabin was 80, 85. And then now that we're back outside, in an outdoor station, it's back up to 150. So the levels fluctuate. I think being in the closed environment with air conditioning helped us get the levels down. I'm now curious what happens if you're in an auto rickshaw because you're in the middle of traffic, there's nothing protecting you. And also what happens if you're in a car and you can turn on your air conditioning. So let's check that out.
Now we're in an auto rickshaw on a South Delhi road. The pollution level, the PM 2.5 level is about 140, 150. Pallavi, what do you make of this? We're in an auto rickshaw. The driver is probably working 10, 12, 14 hours a day.
What does that kind of exposure do to a human body?
Yeah, so, essentially the number is interesting right now because we are in moving traffic. And as you can feel it, there's good airflow, good wind, which is probably helping. But the, minute we hit really congested traffic, or if you're standing, the levels can go up quite a lot, even within a minute or so. And just for context also, these numbers, are fluctuating a little bit. So we're seeing 120, 140, 50. Those are all consistently high. So if it's going down to 120, that's not great.
So why are we looking at PM 2.5? Because one hears more about AQI.
It's a really, really good question. So AQI, or air quality index, is essentially a simplified way to talk about air quality and what the level of air quality is. What it does is take the pollutant concentration, essentially what's in the air, and try and simplify it. Usually you will see it in the form of a color code. So green meaning that the air quality is good, and then progressive reds meaning that the air quality is getting worse and worse. And the reason we're focusing on PM 2.5 is because we've seen decades of evidence, including studies in India, where exposure to these particles can result in a whole range of health issues. Heart disease, lung disease, newborns being born prematurely because of the mother's exposure to air pollution, children's lungs not developing healthily, children developing asthma, all those types of things are associated with exposure to PM 2.5 or the fine particles.
Pallavi, the thing with this is that it's slightly big, it's slightly cumbersome. It's a very good monitor. We calibrated it with some official top-grade monitors. It's also slightly on the expensive side. How can somebody who wants to replicate this kind of experiment or just understand their exposure in their town, in their area, how should they go about it?
Yeah, I think, definitely this is not something people are going to carry around every single day. There are smaller, more handy devices that you could use if you're trying to track what your exposure level is on a day-to-day basis. And also, once you understand the pattern of what happens if I'm, walking, what happens when I'm typically in the car, then you can modulate your behavior according to that.
So this kind of experiment would actually make air pollution really up close and very personal.
Right.
And help you to improve your health outcome.
Yeah, and also, on any given day, what your exposures look like will be very different from mine because we may be doing very different activities. We may be spending more or less time on the road or inside a building or, in a place where pollution levels are either higher or lower. The other thing is what we are trying to do today is a very rough and ready version of what does my exposure look like? A lot of people have done this in the form of scientific studies, trying to understand what is the exposure in different microenvironments.
So we've seen what the pollution levels in an auto rickshaw look like, and it was quite high. And now we're in a car. The windows are up, the air conditioner is on. Pallavi, what is the PM 2.5 level looking like?
It's actually pretty good right now. We are in the low 20s to even, for a few minutes we had about 13, 15 micrograms per meter cube of PM 2.5. So remember, we started with the pavement where we were close to 150, and inside this car where we have, as you said, windows rolled up, the air conditioner is on, and as I understand it, the car also has an inbuilt air purifier. I'm sure that is helping. We're seeing really, really low numbers of PM 2.5, which is really nice to see.
But this is also unfortunate in a sense. It's also unfortunate because how do most of the people who, in Delhi at least, 7 out of 10 people use public transit or walk, and they can't afford a car. So how do they protect themselves? There is an issue of equity.
Absolutely. I think this is such a, stark example of how equity plays into what we can and cannot do to protect ourselves from air pollution. Because not everyone's going to be able to drive a car, as you said, and then also not be able to drive it with the air conditioning on and have the added on features. So the thing to take away from this is, one, we do have this very, very stark difference in what people might be experiencing in terms of pollution exposures. But it also goes to the larger point, which is that unless we reduce emissions at source, we are not going to see benefits for all people in the society, and that's what we're really aiming for. So being inside a car, using a face mask, those are temporary measures that can give us some level of protection, but we still need to be focusing on the bigger picture, which is how do we reduce emissions from the sources so that the overall air quality improves for everybody that is breathing in air every single day.
We are now in one of the greenest parts of Delhi. So let's see the effect of this greenery and also the distance away from vehicular traffic. Let's see what that effect has on PM 2.5. And it's less than 100, it's about 90, 95. Pallavi, what do you make of this? Does this help your health?
What we're seeing in terms of the numbers here, not very surprising. So there's a little bit of a reduction from when we were next to the road or close to the road. It's also starting to be the middle of the day when, at least in peak winter season, if you're trying to go for a walk, like now, between now and 3 p.m. is like your best window. On average, that's going to be your best window. What may be also surprising to some people is that the levels are not as low as they might expect. We're inside a park, it's very green, there's lots of trees, but pollution or PM 2.5 levels are still around 90. And that's because when we're closer to the traffic, they're higher, but there's a baseline level of air pollution in the region, in Delhi or nearby areas. That's not changing even when we're inside the park. So relatively speaking, the levels are lower. And if you're trying to think about, I want to go for a walk, where do I go? Definitely pick a park. Concentrations will typically be lower. Your exposures will be lower. It's also calmer here, which is, good for your mental health. But the reason you don't see that huge drop, why isn't, the number 40, why isn't it 30, is because there's still that background level of air pollution which is very consistent around the region, across the city. But when we go closer to specific sources like transport, like roads, if you're very close to, like a waste burning location, then you have that additional spike. So that's on top of what you may be breathing in on an average basis.
So what it effectively means, if I may try and sum up, is that if pollution is as high as it is in a city like Delhi, there is really no safe space. In fact, there might be just a minor difference in a place like this, in a green place like this, and places like waste dumps which may catch fire, or there might be some kind of waste burning.
Yeah, I would say though that sometimes the contrasts and exposures can be very extreme. I think we've picked a day which is relatively okay. Air pollution levels are starting to deteriorate, but we still have good wind, which helps. It helps a lot with dispersion of pollution. So yeah, I think, in winter what also happens is wind speeds are very low and pollution just tends to stick around. We also saw this when we were in the auto rickshaw earlier because it's all open, but I would say don't necessarily, avoid all green spaces, because there's a larger benefit to it, to your health. Of course, don't go outside if it's, GRAP 2, GRAP 3 conditions. Don't go for a run. It's not the best of ideas, but if the pollution levels are relatively lower and you're in a place that is away from major sources of pollution, physical activity is a good thing to do in general.
Hi, I'm Chetan Bhattacharji, a long-time journalist, and I'm now trying to simplify the science, the data behind air pollution and climate change and how it impacts us as individuals, as communities. If you found this video useful, do share it with somebody else who might also find it useful, and let us know in the comments what the air pollution scene and the monitoring scene looks like in your city.